In this video, I'm going to be talking about the very important, very useful circle of fifths. And so I've kind of got a little bit of an outline already ready over here. So the circle of fifths is a great tool to help determine the number of sharps and flats in each key signature that we'll be playing. And I'm going to walk through the circle of fifths and some useful tools on how to use it and quick ways to determine how many sharps or flats you should be playing depending on the scale you're working in. I just realized I had a E partially erased there. So, we'll get to that later. So we're going to start with the key of C. That one is probably one of the easiest ones. Key of C does not have any sharps or flats at all. So I'm just going to label that as 0 sharps. It's pretty easy. If I were to play this on the keyboard, you would see this here. They're all white keys. No blacks, no flats or sharps in that one. So now we're going to move on to G. This is kind of our circle here, and I'll walk through that some more to determine which key you're going to go in next. So we start at C, that's our default. Now our next key is going to have just one sharp. And how I determine that that is G, at least one easy way to do it, just take your hand and then count 5 from C. So I got C, D, E, F, G. I landed on G on number 5. So that one is the next one up in the circle of fifths. That one's going to have one sharp. Then I'm going to keep going in this direction. So we get to D. Same thing, I go from G, I count my 5 times, so G, A, B, C, D. And we get to D, it's next in the list, so we're going to have 2 sharps. Now if we continue that pattern, we're going to see we go to A, 3 sharps, 4 sharps for E, and we're going to keep going down here until we get to B. Now, once we get here, we can basically switch between either sharps or flats. So this one, you might see it written as B. You could also see it written as C flat. Those are both the same note. And it's something called enharmonics, where it's the same note, but it can be written 2 different ways. And so when we get there, we have 5 sharps, but we could also label it as 7 flats. And I'll explain the flats in a little bit as we go down. But for now, we'll just keep that flat there to show you that this one can be written 2 different ways. If we continue down, F sharp, we can also have G flat, same note, 2 different ways of naming it, 6 sharps. And then we'll keep going down this way. And then I'll fill in these sharps, finish the rest of them. All right, so far what we have here, we're going to end here for the sharps. Once we get into A flat, E flat, etc., you're going to see those rarely ever written as sharps. So we're going to pause here for the sharps. So you see we kind of have this linear progression or circular progression in the graph. And we're just going down 5 for each one, or going up 5 for each one. Now you'll notice here I went from B to F sharp instead of F. Now there may be other ways of thinking about this, but for me, another way of thinking about this is in whole steps and half steps, which that's how I would arrive at F sharp instead of B. So I'm going to show you those really quick. So if we start C, we go up 5. What I'm doing is I'm going up 2 whole steps. So 1 whole step, 2 whole steps, half step, whole. So my pattern, whole, whole, half, whole. And that brings me at G. Now say I start at G. G, going up whole, whole, half. And we're going up another whole. And we arrive at D. Now I could continue this pattern with D. So we'll start with D. Whole, whole, half. And we're going to another whole. We arrive at A. Now I'll show you that B going to F sharp just so you have an understanding. So again, we're going down to that B. I'm skipping over E and A. B in the graphic. And I'm going B. I'm going a whole step. Another whole step. A half step. And a whole step. And I've arrived at F sharp. So that's how I get to F sharp and later on C sharp when I'm going through this pattern. So those are our sharps. That's how you can determine the number of sharps in each key. Now, for the rest of this, I'm actually going to get rid of a few of these arrows here. We're going to go through the flats. So the flats, it works basically the same way we did the sharps, except we're going backwards. So now I'm counting backwards from C. Let's see if I can count backwards. We're going C, B, A, G, and then F. And that's how I arrive at F. F is going to have 1 flat. Now we're going to keep going down another 5. We're going to have 2 flats for B flat. We continue the pattern to E flat. That's 3 flats. And then 4 flats for A flat. And that is how we count out our flats. Now, as I mentioned down here before, we have our enharmonics. We could keep going with 5 flats and 6 flats. So you'll notice F sharp here has 6 flats, 6 sharps, same thing. So that is our circle of fifths and how you can use it to determine the number of flats and sharps that you're going to be playing in whatever scale you have. Now you might have some questions as to which notes are sharp and which notes are flat in each of these key signatures. Basically, that same rule I used with counting 5s applies to that as well. So we know that C has no sharps. They're all, if you're playing on a piano, all white keys. G has 1 sharp. So sharp number 1 is always going to be F sharp. So you can kind of think of that as the one that you're going to start with, right? So G, this is pretty much something you have to memorize. There is another way I'll teach you in another video, but for the purposes of this video, it really does help to at least have this part memorized. So in the key of G, our sharp is always going to be F sharp. Now, if we have two sharps, that's going to be F sharp. Then we're going to count up from F. So F, G, A, B, C. So our second sharp is going to be C sharp. If we continue down the line, have F sharp, C sharp. We're going to count 5 again, so we're going to go C, D, E, F, G. I think I counted that wrong. C, D, E, F, G. Yes. And I'll show one more example. So we've got our F sharp, C, G, and then one more G, A, B, C, D. And you can use this pattern to keep counting all the sharps going down this direction. Hopefully you'll get the idea. It should be pretty straightforward. Now, on the other end, for flats, our first flat is going to be B flat. That's where we start in the key of F. The key of F has one flat note, and that's B. So if we have two flats, we're now counting backwards rather than forwards like we did with the sharps. So we're going to go to, we're starting with B, B flat, then we're going to go A, G, F, and E. So our two flats are going to be B flat, E flat. And we have 3. First two are the same. We're going to count down again 5 from E, so E, D, C, B, A. And you'll notice too that these are following the same pattern here almost. So we have B flat, E, E, A, A. And then likewise, you'll see also that our sharps are following the same pattern. So in this case, our first sharp is an F. So if we were to continue this pattern down this direction, you'll see we're adding on a C, a G, a D, we'd add A, etc., etc. So those are my tips for using the circle of fifths to find out key signatures, determine the number of sharps and flats that you're going to be playing, and what those notes are.